Life is really like a journey, and when you think about it, this journey is quite short. We get born, eventually we go to school, before you know it we get graduated, perhaps we get married, have kids, get a job, pay taxes, go on holidays, but really, what is 70, 80, or even 90 years? Life is short, and the question that we all have is there a greater purpose? Though life is short, it is also fascinating. The world we live in is a beautiful place. All around us we see incredible design. The shapes and colors that meet the eye indicate there is something behind this all. Nature seems to be intricately connected and nothing lives for itself. Everything seems to have a greater purpose. Have you ever thought about how birds fly? Just the aerodynamics are incredible. A lot of things need to be in place for that little bird to take off into the sky. Nothing flies by accident. Someone must have planned it. Someone must have had a purpose. If you look at the very tiniest organisms of creation, their existence still needs to be explained by an intelligence outside of the actual object. Have you ever thought about the fact that we could have seen the world around us in black and white? For example, like your parent or grandparent watched their first TV. And yet there are all these spectacular colors that meet the eye. Are they necessary? Well, life consists of more than necessities. Beauty meets the eye, and this tells us that there's a designer behind this all. I'm 34 years old, and in a few years will be considered halfway in life's journey. And yet there is something inside of us that tells us that death was never meant to be. It's as if eternity exists in our heart, this longing for something more. I mean, think about all the children's stories. Don't they all end with, and they lived happily ever after? There must be something more. There must be something between heaven and earth. When we look around us and we see design, we naturally assume that a designer has been at work. Think about the simple object like a bench. Obvious someone has had a purpose in mind for people to sit on this bench. And so when we look at the intricate things around us in nature, shouldn't we ask the question, where is the designer? What if there is a designer who had a purpose in creating us? What if the designer is like a loving parent? Remember that the designer determines the purpose. What if God's purpose is to love us, and our purpose is to know Him and love Him and imitate Him? I have a friend who works as an emergency doctor. He has on several occasions sat down with parents, comforting them as their child is struggling to survive. The same scenario repeats. Each parent expresses that they would want to take the place of their child and suffer instead of them. Is there a God who watches over us? We are told that God sent His Son to suffer and die in our place so we can be set free from sin that leads to death. Jesus came to give us a happy end. He came to reunite us with our Heavenly Father. Last year, my wife and I had our first child, a beautiful baby boy. The first time I held our baby in my arms, I felt such a love towards him, and I thought to myself, this is only a shadow of the love that God has towards each one of us. I believe the purpose of life is to discover that there is a loving God that cares for us and has a purpose and plan for each one of us.